My name is Tonya Whitney, and I am the current president of the MnCMN, and I will be helping steward this panel today. And we have pulled together 4 amazing people to talk about various aspects of the state of change management. And I'm going to keep this slide up for a little bit while each of them gets a chance to say hello to you all as an introduction, because I know all of them and could be a complete cheerleader for each one of them, but I want to give them a chance to talk about their passions and their companies. So we'll start on that left-hand side. Erin Abdelnour, tell them about yourself.
Yay! Hi, everybody. I was watching the names of people join, and there's some people I know, so it's exciting. Thank you for coming. I'm Erin Abdelnour. I was a client-facing OCM consultant for about 20 years, and my specialty, my focus was all things IT, so I really played in that intersection of OCM and IT. I now lead Change Staffing full-time. Change Staffing is a boutique boutique staffing and employee placement firm that specializes in OCM. And we throw that OCM net quite broadly. I kind of talk about 2 spaces that are sort of stereotypical, but in the IT space, we work with full life cycle OCMers, communication specialists, trained developers, and on the HR side, true organizational designers, organizational development, and folks that play in that culture space, pure culture change with absence of, without an IT something coming through the system. We are based in Houston, Texas, but we serve clients across the United States, and we have a network of independent consultants across the United States as well. So the lens that I bring to tonight's session, or this afternoon, tonight, wherever you are, is really that of external consulting, staffing, as well as independent contracting, all in the OCM space. I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much, Tonya, and everybody else for having me.
Thank you, Erin. I've known Erin, you guys, for like 25 years. Like, we were little tykes at Arthur Anderson together so many years ago. All right, next up, John Koss. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. I realize I look nothing like my profile picture, so I go through a transformation in the wintertime, I guess. But John Koss, I like to say I grew up in training and development at Target, did a lot of communications work, and kind of fell into some OCM consulting, which led me to some various projects, and then ended up being an HR leader for some small consulting firms where I hired change consultants. I know a lot of friends on here from that. And now I'm a director of client partnerships at Verseek Search and Consulting. So Verseek's business is interim solutions. We have direct hire and we have executive search. We span industries, we span functional areas as well. So not only, you may hear Verseek and think HR or finance, but we also have IT, marketing, lead gen, as well as support specialty businesses. My role is to establish and build partnerships with local HR leaders, how to be their go-to person if they need an HR consultant, if they need different types of consultants, and then be a connector of people, either within Verseek or to the candidates that we're turning into consultants for those roles. So it's been a fun role for me with all my different experiences and things. What I bring to the table tonight, my viewpoint is really from the staffing standpoint of what we're seeing when it comes to change consultants in the Twin Cities.
Awesome. Oh, I'm so glad you're here, for sure. Dr. Keeley. I've never called you that, but that's kind of fun. Dr. K, tell us about yourself.
Lots of people call me Dr. K, as a matter of fact. Thank you for the intro, Tonya. I clearly have lost my tan. Dang it. I live in Portland, Oregon, so not surprising. And I've been a change management consultant for about 18 years in every form of that word and all those forms of those jobs. I think I've done probably everything there is to do in our industry. And along the way, I got my PhD in industrial and organizational psychology, which is really the study of everything about humans in the workplace. So every single element of being a human being and going to work is part of that umbrella. So naturally, change management falls into that spot. And the best thing you can do with a PhD degree is teach. So I also teach classes at 2 universities here in Oregon, and those classes are focused on change management. My passion and what I'm bringing to this conversation is really the lens of getting more people interested in our field, helping to kind of create a well-defined path for getting these jobs and growing in this industry. I think that's the main things I'm going to bring to this conversation. And I just also wanted to mention briefly, I'm a founding member of the Global Association for Change Management Professionals and also our Pacific Northwest chapter. So really happy to be doing an event with another group of members and kind of spreading my wings a little bit more, because I often teach webinars and do talks at the conferences there. But of course, the last couple of years has really limited that. So thank you for offering an opportunity to engage with more members.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Last, but certainly not least, is Sunil from Propeller.
Hello, thank you, Tanya. And it's such an honor as we kind of walk through the introductions from the others. Honor to serve on this panel with everybody else. I'm Sunil Kasturi, and my story is I come to change via technology. So I started off being at Microsoft and Intel, thinking about products and customers and large enterprises and end users. And lo and behold, I moved on to a consulting career and decided change management was where my heart was, mainly because I was very interested in helping people through journeys and actually have them achieve the end result of transformation. So now I'm at Propeller. I'm Propeller's Chief Growth Officer. Been here about a decade. We're a management consulting firm with about 250 consultants in 5 markets, so headquartered in Portland, but also in the Bay Area, Denver, Minneapolis, and Dallas. And we, much like John mentioned, span across functions and industry verticals as well. The industries we've served and continue to serve are retail, healthcare, tech, energy and utilities, education, public sector, so on and so forth. When we organized our expertise, change management, or as we call ourselves now, people and change, was our earliest practice offering. It's been a practice offering since about 2016, and about half of the firm are certified CM practitioners. So when I heard about all of the great certifications that MnCMN is offering, my mind went there, that we are a big advocate of trying to get everyone certified and ready for change management work. Our main work is about supporting transformations. So what we do is look at large changes that hit strategy, process, technology, and people, and of course, focus on helping people be successful. We're known to bring kind of strong framework and a tool mindset, but really want to customize our approach to make our clients successful. So we have a lot of room in the way we approach our client work to really focus on what our clients need and provide a really customized approach to solve these problems. And the end goal is certainly drive adoption of changes, but also in a way that helps business outcomes for which the changes were originated in the first place. So that's kind of our mindset. I'm really excited to be here today and bring to bear some lessons, some things that we're seeing in the industries and in the transformations that we're closely working in. So lovely to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. I think those of you that are on the call, you can give a thumbs up if you want to. Maybe we've got some cool people on this panel to help talk about state of change management. I'm glad they got a chance to introduce that. Yeah, exactly. Introduce themselves. I'm going to stop sharing this darn screen because I love the idea that as we start walking through some of the questions we're going to go through here in the next 30 minutes, that you all can see their faces and get a chance to possibly that chat up so that we can engage with one another that way. So we're going to spend about 30 minutes going through some pre-planned questions with the panel, maybe riff on them a little bit. And then when we get to the 5:30 time frame, we're going to really open it up to give you that chance to connect and engage on this topic with us. Okay, so you know who I'm going to start with? I'm going to put John Koss on the spot because I feel like between John and Sunil, they are here to kind of represent a little bit of the kind of what's happening. And actually, maybe I'll go with Sunil first. I'm not sure. Anyway, but is what industries and areas are requesting OCM resources, or maybe the opposite, kind of waning in those asks for the need for change management talent. And you know what, just because I went there already, we're going with John. So John, you take it first, and then we'll let Sunil chime in as well and see what we hear from you.
Sounds good. Thank you. It's a great question. And as I was thinking about this and specifically what we're seeing in the Twin Cities market, what we're working on at Verseek, and then what I've seen in the past, I think the first thing that people will think of, like, oh, okay, well, if I'm doing change, the companies that need change consultants right now Cargill, Medtronic, and they all often name the big players. As I look back at the roles that we have worked on in the past and are working on right now, we are working with the big global companies that you would think of, but we've also worked on roles for nonprofits. And we've worked on companies for smaller family-owned businesses. And so the message that I would share first off is that don't just think about the big companies as the ones that need the change help, because it's happening across the board in various industries.
Great point. Sunil, you want to chime in a little bit more on that one?
Sure. I think, we've seen a lot of shifts that are happening, and I'll pick on two industries because that was one of the questions. Retail and healthcare certainly are out there representing big changes that are happening in the marketplace. We're seeing a lot of organizational churn happen as a result of the ways of working over the last 2 years. And, we're growing to learn that the only constant is change, right? And so there's a lot of work around just preparing people for change, whether it is individual contributors or leadership, and a lot of focus actually on middle management as well to support this. So that's one of the things, that's one of the spaces where we're being requesting OCM resources. I think the topic of the moment is returning to work and hybrid offerings and what is the right fit for your company as we're kind of moving away from a post-pandemic era into more, it's not quite business as usual, but something has certainly changed. And so a lot of change planning and a lot of change strategies in the center of that kind of work, and OCM resources are also being requested there. One interesting place is also, I think there's a lot of focus on trying to focus on employee development as part of their experience. Lots more focus to how folks can be thinking about their careers in interesting ways. So not just the vertical way up, which was probably the more traditional way of building organizations and careers, but how do we think about organizational effectiveness from the landscape of allowing career development in a number of different ways? So one of the places we've been requested resources is kind of that career development lattice, organizational structures, and things of that nature. And the fourth one, I'm sure everyone on this call is working with in some form or fashion, and that is technology transformation. There is across retail and healthcare for sure, there's lots of investments being made in this space, whether it is, and even in the high-tech sector that we're working with, whether it is employee-focused transformation, where we're helping employees make their work easier by providing them applications and processes that are supporting their journey, or customer-focused, so that we have more reach through mechanisms like the web to reach to customers and bring them to have different experiences with the clients that we're working with. And there's a lot of focus on just making sure that the technology not only lands, but it sticks. So having a little bit more focus on what's in it for people across different levels, and how can we enable this technology shift, this process shift in a way that is a little bit more sustainable for organizations is also an area of focus where we've actually been requested resources in the last couple of years, and certainly in the last 6 months for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, and Tony, if I can add something, because I think Sunil mentioned something about upskilling. One thing that I think is really interesting is that for a lot of organizations wanting to upskill, they're wanting change to be part of roles that exist right now. So I was doing searches on this today, and roles that were popping up for having a change management requirement within them are HRBPs. And so who a couple of years ago would think like, oh, that's a requirement of being an HR leader now. But so those are a lot of companies that are looking for those to just be a part of the organization, and they're asking for it. It's not necessarily just a snapshot in time now, like, oh, we're doing a change project. They're really trying to bring it in as living and breathing within the organization.
I appreciate that. Let's see, let me look at my time for a minute. I've got like 1 more minute. Keely or Aaron, anything else you want to add on that particular topic?
Yeah, I wanted to pipe in.
No, go ahead, Keely.
Okay. So currently I'm working with a subsidiary of Google, and we're seeing in that space and my colleagues at Microsoft, because of the layoffs and the predicted shrinkage, a lot of these contracted change roles kind of moving off campus and out the door, and expecting that people who are employees who are remaining are going to have those skills and do those things. So I just wanted to add that in terms of waning. I think high tech is going to take a little bit of, going to shrink a little bit, which is what you would predict. On the other hand of that, all my colleagues in healthcare, all my friends in healthcare are like, we need more people in healthcare because healthcare is becoming and will continue to be coming out of this stress position they've been in for the last couple of years and really trying to recover and get to whatever the new normal is for them. So I just wanted to add those.
Appreciate that. Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I think our next question will continue to piggyback on what everybody's already mentioned related to, the requested OCM resources or where it's waning in industries and that. Let's go with Aaron first to answer this one, which is, what are the future trends you're seeing in relation to skills that are requested or the work needed in that OCM space?
Yes, Tonya, I regret not building in a poll on this one and sort of asking, people what they thought, but that's okay. I kid you not, kind of the newest and hottest skill in 2023 is the willingness and the ability to come into the office. At least 2 to 3 days a week. And I don't kid. I know that, organizations are flexing, developing the future of work, adopting new ways of working. But there's definitely a trend of, I want to see you every once in a while. And it actually becomes a barrier to alignment in the hiring process sometimes. So that's been an interesting thing as people have options, choices, and draw lines in certain places as their employers draw lines in certain places. So it'll just be interesting to see how that continues to play out. The top 2 skills that we've seen that were sort of new or bubbled to the top throughout last year, and this year remains to be seen. The first being organizational design. And when I say organizational design, I mean true skilled organizational designers, not someone like myself who had a career, in the IT space and perhaps I mapped ERP roles to an organizational chart. That's not organizational design. And I say that only because a lot of people raise their hands for organizational design roles that may not have that true education background experience of working with an organization, a strategic manner in order to, design how the organization should operate for their future goals. So a really interesting, I guess when people ask me, should I get ProSci certified or what new skills should I get? If you have an opportunity to learn more about organizational design, that's a great one. The second one that's really been quite predominant is the ability to build internal OCM capabilities. And that could span anywhere from standing up a CMO within a PMO, standing up a center of change excellence, or implementing an internal change management methodology. So that just building that internal capability. We saw that very strongly during COVID, but we continue to work with so many organizations that are somewhere on that maturity path of developing capabilities internally and trying to decrease their need to go externally for that support. One that I like to throw in there, it's a little bit trickier, but particularly those of us, I've been doing this since the 90s, so I'll put myself in that category of being seasoned. In 2023, you have got to be able to communicate visually in a graphical manner. And that may not, and I throw, maybe I'm, being stereotypical about those of us that are a little bit more seasoned, but we've got to look at the way people are communicating with each other in 2023. And it's less with words and more with pictures, more in sound bites, more in, how can I get my point across in a very efficient and catching way? So it's something to think about. We did a lot of, we work with a lot of just fantastically talented people in this space. We did a blog series on this last year, so can definitely point you to a little bit more information about that. But I really encourage you to look at yourself and ask yourself how strong you are there. And then I think it was Sunil, technology is not going anywhere. That remains the backbone of the OCM market.
Awesome. And you just gave a wonderful piggyback to let Sunil be the next person to kind of chime in on this question around trends in the skills being requested or the work needed. So Sunil, you wanna chime in for a bit? I don't see you now.
It looks like his computer crashed.
Oh no. Okay, well, we'll come back to Sunil. I'm wondering though, if John, you got anything to say in this space? I loved it when she started talking org design, because I figure that that's possible in your world of kind of that HR.
Yeah. org design. I would also say talent management, because the talent marketplace, you have companies like Workday that are really into the skills marketplaces within their technology, and companies are continuously evolving with, how they think about talent, how they talk about talent. And as technology keeps moving forward and as things continue changing, you have people sitting there saying like, okay, well, how do we do this differently now? Or how do we talk about this? And so talent management, talent development is another one where we're seeing a lot of requests for change.
Yep, awesome. And then Keely, what about you? You want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to offer other than to the folks on this call that are experienced change folks trying to kind of broaden your umbrella a little bit more. I think a real natural progression of the change management practice folks is the chief of staff role and some of those strategic partnership roles, because you end up being such a trusted advisor to so many leaders and executives through your work that a real natural progression of skills is up there. And I've been approached by several of my clients to fit into those roles after a change initiative launches. So I think, and those skill sets are different, but they're similar. And I just think it's worth noting that, and I loved Erin's comments on having visual skills and org designers, and change people's kind of end up being like, whatever's hard and difficult and weird, throw it my way and we'll figure it out. And I mean, that's what happens all the time, right? And then now like the talent management and all of us being kind of targeted in this, how do we get people to come back into the office? So just, yeah, there's a lot of difficult things that happen in the business world where change people can make things better and easier.
Right. Erin, when you mentioned the visuals, I thought of, if some of you on the call are not aware of this woman, her name is Sharon. I can't remember her last name. She runs Change Superhero out of Australia. Follow her stuff. She puts out great graphical content on the regular. So sometimes you might get that opportunity to have a little shortcut to creating content based on some of her stuff. So Change Superhero, her first name's Sharon. Erin, do you remember her last name? Connolly.
She's fantastic, and I've collaborated with her. The blogs that I mentioned, and one of the blogs is Sharon, and so she shares some of that. If you don't have a design mindset, don't be afraid. You have one, even if you don't think you have one. So anyway, she's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to move on to the next question, but hopefully I may get a way to bring this one back to Sunil, because I think he was really ready to dig into it.
Oh.
So we'll go next though. Oh, whoops. Go ahead. No.
I'm sorry. That was just me lamenting Sunil's technology problems.
I know that's a bummer, but it happens, right, man? In this new world order of video conferencing on the regular. So, okay, so let's move on a little bit. We'll keep into the space of John and Erin on this one. So John, if you want to take this one first, it's, as we talk about skills, then both of you all work in kind of a staffing opportunity in your firms. And I know that there's, Sunil may be able to speak to this in a moment as well, but what do you guys look for in resumes or when you're interviewing resources specifically for OCM type skills? And we'll go first to John.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The first thing I'll say is it depends, which isn't a great response, but it depends on what the client asks for. So I think the most typical things, there's a lot of times where clients won't look at a candidate unless they have the ProSci certification, kind of being the price of admission, right? But I would say that, what I have looked for when I was recruiting change consultants, what we look for, number one, if you can have a diverse industry experience, types of change roles you've done, maybe not just having done, 5 years of technology implementations, something like that, but maybe having done a talent transformation, which leads me to the next point, which is transformation being a key word that pops out, not only in job descriptions, but when we're looking at profiles, and seeing that somebody might have some of that expertise where they can really be credible, have a seat at the table, being able to talk what the change is happening within that company. If they're doing a talent transformation, being able to say, yep, I've led talent management, or I've been a talent management practitioner and been in the weeds, but I also have that change element. That can go a long way in really elevating that candidate to the top for what the client has been looking for.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, let's let Aaron riff on that a little bit, and then we'll see if I saw Sunil come back. So we may catch you in just a moment, Sunil. So Aaron, skills or interview needs, tell me more.
Sorry, the sun is setting on my face. So anyway, the first thing that comes to mind is, if needed, modernize your resume. And by that, I don't mean add color or add your photo, all that's great too. But the challenge in 2023 is you've got to make your resume appealing to a machine and a human. And I'll sort of touch on, both those things. From the human perspective, make it appealing for someone to look at. And by that, I mean more about the organization of it. You'll hear me keep on saying, use fewer words, but make sure those words are extremely impactful. Include specifics in your resume. Oftentimes, I'll see that someone has, like generic organizational change management experience, but I have no idea what they've done, and I don't know what to do with them, or how to sell them to somebody. And at the same time, those words do have to be impactful both to a human reader and then, possible keywords. And John even threw out, a few there: digital transformation, etc. Customize your resume if needed. I used to be like, I have one version of my resume and I'm only going to have one. In the OCM space, particularly when you're in a period of growth in your career, it's a very common scenario where we have someone who grew up as a comm specialist or grew up as a training specialist, and they want to broaden into the OCM space. Fantastic. That's kind of a great pipeline for OCM talent. But then when they're going after the OCM role, they present me with a comms resume, or present me with a training resume. I use that as an example of whatever job that you were going after. Look at your experience and, reframe that experience towards that job that you're going for. It's just kind of pulling out the highlights of what's relevant to that. And the other thing I'll say is, people often get a little bit too caught up on their internal job titles. Job titles are not, consistent across organizations, and are sometimes meaningless, outside of your organization, or maybe even send a message that, to the external world that's not congruent with your experience. And so as long as you stay honest and directionally correct, I wouldn't get so hung up on that internal language. Just make sure you're honestly sharing it with an external audience that may not be familiar with your internal nomenclature or, your previous companies. Be nice to recruiters, both internal and external recruiters. I can't tell you, or I could tell you lots of stories about how people, treat recruiters. We're going to either be advocates for you or not advocates for you. So just, be nice to your recruiter. I'm going to give some don'ts, and these sound a little, I don't mean to be silly with these, but they've all happened. Don't, pull your car over to the side of the road and take an interview on your phone. Don't hold your phone in your hand and walk around your house like this, while an interview. Had that done. I think the toughest one in all seriousness is, a lot of us work on laptops. And so we're doing that conversation like this, where the person's looking up, our neck and our chin. Just find a book, do something to prop up your laptop so that you're, looking, whoever you're conversing with in the eyes. Just a couple of things about how you show up if you're doing these, video interviews. And then I think probably the biggest one is don't try to be a Renaissance person. When I'm interviewing someone and they've done it all, but they've done it all kind of at a global level, and we can't talk about the specifics of something specifically or particularly to the independent contracting world, because they typically are looking for someone who's been there, done that specific thing. But more importantly, just be able to articulate your wheelhouse. What is it that you love doing? What is it that you do well? Because that's going to, probably lead, much more to a win-win in terms of you ending up in a role where you can add value and that you go home every night, feeling good about.
Tonya, can I
Nice.
add one quick
No,
thing
please
too?
do, John. And then I'm also going to try to get Sunil into this conversation too. Go for
Sounds
it.
good, because I recognize we've talked a lot about, those that have, either, like we said, they've had change communication experience or training experience or things like that. I was just talking with a really solid change leader who's on this call right now about this recently. And we're talking about how one of the best change consultants that we know is a former engineer. And so this may give some of you hope, or a few of you hope, that maybe you don't have that classical resume that looks like it's change, transformation and all of that, that sometimes having a lot of solid project experience that might be supply chain, or it might be finance related or things like that, but you've really looked at why is this project maybe not bringing the value that it should be, and you start digging into it and recognizing that, the change strategy is ultimately what would improve it or what would bring that value. Those have been some of the best consultants that I've worked with and known as well.
Nice.
And John, specifically what I tell people to do when they're looking at that engineering background and say, how do I show my OCM skill set? Pick your favorite OCM methodology. Look at the major components of that: engaging leaders, engaging stakeholders, communicating, preparing people for change. If you, and then look at that in your case, that engineering experience, pull out those skill sets and highlight them. And then suddenly, I've been doing OCM work in the engineering space, and I can now pivot perhaps to a more classical OCM role.
Yeah, and they might not have even realized it until you show them.
Yeah, a lot of times I've been doing this with people, and I'm like, oh my God, you have so much OCM experience.
Exactly. Yep.
Very nice. That speaks highly to folks that are on this call, right? Because not all of us have been in the business of change management forever. So I hope that those of you that are thinking about it or having that concern about how do I pivot, you just got some really great nuggets there between John and Aaron. Thank you. So let's try to get Sunil into this a little bit. And Sunil, what I'd ask is, don't hesitate to go ahead and try to bring out what you want to say about the skill sets being asked for. If you have something to say about resumes and interviews, go for that. But I'd also like to start you and Keely down that path that we had planned next, which is really that career advancement pathway for change management. And anything you might add. I mean, it's open. I want to give you the chance to chime in now.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to get back, and thank you to my colleague Riley who helped me. My computer is actually down right next to me, and I'm trying to navigate these technology challenges. The one thing that came up to me when both Aaron and John were talking about from just a skills perspective, and I do agree with Keely from an organizational design perspective, even change managers make amazing org design folks. I think part of it is being able to tap into a number of diverse experiences and really go to the foundation of, we've all through our careers been in places where we've worked to change, right? Like there was a current state, there's a future state, and we, in whatever roles we had, helped people, helped ourselves, helped our organizations, helped our teams navigate that. I think it's really important to think about that and bring that out in a tangible way, and actually not be afraid to go many years in your career to see where all has that happened and how. I find that extremely valuable because it points not only to your skill set and capabilities, but also the curiosity mindset that helps change managers so much. I think strong communication skills, and that should be in the way we interact with folks who are in the recruiting process, because that's something we expect of change managers. We're navigating difficult situations and having to communicate that to a variety of audiences. So making sure that that is front and center in the way we think about ourselves and representing ourselves is key. And the third one I had was thinking about, like, we may have careers or backgrounds. The engineering was a great one. Others are business analysis. If you're a business analyst in the past and you really went to the nuggets of what changed and how did we get people ready for the new state of the business, or if it's data in a similar way, all of those skill sets actually lend themselves well, especially to the changes that are happening in the industry today, the transformations that are happening in the industry today. And the last point, I think, is during the interviewing process, much like my technology meltdown today, is to be in the moment and be ready to pivot, right? Conversations are going to go, then nothing is scripted, conversations are going to go, and just being prepared to kind of go with the flow and roll with the punches, I think, is a really important part of how you show up in these conversations. If I can extend this, Tanya, into that next question.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
where I really see folks who kind of come into the space, right, with a number of skill sets and doing change work, where I see them kind of progressing to, and we actually did some work with a client of ours to help map a newly formed change organization into where can we go from here. All of these employees had this question, so we actually helped them with a couple of workshops here. The truth of the matter is there's a lot of different paths. a lot of companies that are now realizing that changes are constant, which is why all of us are in this call today, have realized that there needs to be a sustaining presence that is able to navigate the change on the basis of frameworks that work for that particular company and organization, and tools and techniques. So transformation offices and CMOs, change management offices, are becoming more and more common, and we've actually helped some clients set those up. And that become really a good place for change managers to not only establish themselves, but to grow, and to not only think about managing a change, but thinking about assessments, like how much change management support is necessary? What does that take the shape and form of? And then how do we kind of help organizations that are transforming with a menu of options? So that's one path. Another path that I've seen them go is also one of the offshoots of going through a large change with a company is they realize that they need, again, a sustaining presence for change communications and training. So that communications and training work that may have been somebody's kind of part-time job now has gained a lot of significance because they realized that that's why they made this change viable and successful. So we've helped clients through transformation, at the end of which we've actually helped them create an internal CC&T, change communications and training organization. And then, we've kind of helped hire the first couple of people, and then that's grown and provided room for a lot of change managers to continue to grow their skill sets. And the third area where I see some change managers really go to is now, again, they've done stakeholder management. They've interacted with some very, people across all levels of the organization, but certainly at the higher levels, because, we know that current day leaders and executives are getting more and more on the value of change management, and are really trying to see how to continue to keep change as sustainable and, and combat that change saturation curve that we all know exists. So I think what this allows us to do is for people to kind of move into that business side and kind of be the business process expert, be kind of the stakeholder that they once supported, take on the role of that stakeholder on the business side, because again, they know the future state of the change, and they also know the arc the organization and the business is going on. So we've seen folks kind of move from many years in the change management field into kind of careers and kind of directions such as these.
Nice. If you don't mind, I'm going to give Keely a chance to chime in a little bit too, Sunil. We can come back around to you. So Keely, Dr. K,
Yeah.
I know that the big thing that I wanted you to help highlight tonight is career advancement paths, ways that folks can get skilled up beyond what everybody talks about ProSci, right? But beyond that, perhaps. Yeah. So chime in on kind of what you see as an educator in the change management field.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to talk more tactically. So I think there's lots of stepping. I mean, when I look at change management as a career, it's like a pond with a bunch of stepping stones in it. And so there are internal company roles that have internal change management offices, like Sunil mentioned, or change communications folks. So internal roles that are change folks. There's companies that need a boost or a lift when they have a large project or a tech implementation. So you have external consultants that come in, or external firms where you buy, the whole software package and the business analysts that come with it, and the trainers and the change people. You also have independence, which Aaron talked about, which is, I'm on year 5 of being my own independent shop as well. And so that's just me and people like Aaron who get clients who have odd or difficult or complex or unique situations and go, we need a change person that's not somebody that's in the big 5. They're not attached to some methodology. We want someone who comes in and will do us for us. And so independents do that a lot, which is really fun because you get much more diversity in your background and your experiences, I think. Also, I think project managers tend, after they do project management work a lot, kind of get bored with that. And then they see maybe the challenge or the love or the compassion that change people have and go, I want to do that work. That's more rewarding in whatever way. So I think people come into this work through the project management roles as well. And then I think another way of advancing in change management might be and I've seen this just a couple of times, but John and Sunil have alluded to this, is like folks in HR who were business partners or who were in training, or who are in performance management, who start to take on kind of these change roles or these change attributes. So I think those are some really definite ways that people come into this work. I think if you're in an ops job, like an ops manager or a supervisor or any kind of operational role in leadership, if your company goes through a big enough change where you have change people shepherding it, you will then get experience to what change leadership is, what being a part of a change champion network is, and what it really means to lead a change. And I've seen several leaders that I have worked with at the end of those implementations go, I don't want to manage this group anymore and do monotony. I want to do what you do, which is help people transform their work. So I think that's another way that people come in and advance through change management. I will just do a shout out, like at Nike, and I think Sunil may have alluded to this too. They also do what's called stretch assignments. And I'm guessing other companies do this as well, where you might be a normal person in your career path somewhere in an internal job, and there might be an opportunity for you to volunteer or stretch and do some of the work in a large transformational project, or help some of the training team or the communications team, or be a part of a change champion network. So those are some other opportunities to kind of get your way in. In terms of like a real strong career path from high school, college, change manager, that path is as wobbly as it gets. I mean, all of us who have been in this field for more than a decade come from very different places. As you heard from our introductions, IT, consulting, internal, the engineering example that John gave, we all come from different places, and there is no like well-greased machine. Go to this school, get this degree, here you go, bam. I think in the olden days, and I'm not going to put a number on that, most of us went to work at a big 5 or a big 6 firm, Accenture, Arthur Andersen, McKinsey, one of those places, and you become part of those big technology sales packages, Workday, Salesforce, where the company will buy that software and then you tag along with that team. So it's not just hardware, it's not just software, it's not just testers, it's also change folks. So that to me still seems like the most foolproof way of getting those experiences onto your resume and really getting into a pipeline. But I think there are more and more opportunities to do bits and pieces of change work that'll help, to Erin's point, build your resume, where you may be an engineer or an ops person or a project manager or any other type of job, but you have had to do change communications, and you have had to facilitate change leadership training, and you have had to shepherd people through a transformation. So I think there's other opportunities there. I'm going to hold on my academic programs comments for just a minute to see if John, Sunil, or Erin want to pipe in.
You can keep on going.
No? Okay. So the other question you asked me was kind of, what are these educational programs? Like if I want to learn more and start to pave a career into change management, how do we really do that? And as we've all said, ProSci is kind of the know all be all. And it's like they were the thing that went viral before becoming viral was a thing, you know? And it's not like they sunk all their money in marketing, but anyone in this industry knows ProSci certification. And it's not significantly better than lots of other ways you can get educated in change. It just happens to be kind of the standard in some way. And so first and foremost, I think most of the time having a ProSci certification or going through that training and letting your certification lapse after a year or two is a tried and true method for having these jobs. But there are tons of other academic organizations that are building change capabilities. Lots of them have change certificate programs. I'm teaching in one at Portland State. I provided some material that you'll get at the end that has like a list of universities: Cornell, New York University, Stanford. Tons and tons of schools now have change management certification courses. And they now have change management classes in other programs, like their MBA programs, in their Masters of Organizational Leadership programs, in their marketing and communications programs. So the opportunity to actually learn about this industry before you're already in a job someplace is vast. And actually LinkedIn also has incredibly good learning assets on their platform about change management, lots and lots of them. So there's no shortage of things to learn and where places to get educated. What's hard is actually getting the experience. And so like in the 2 classes I teach, one of them, I make them go out and find a client and do a change intervention. And of course, they're pretty small, like, can your people take a survey and we'll figure out how to improve communication around here, or a business problem like, we hate the software, can we try 3 other vendors and pick one? You know, just very small tangible things. But now those students have a tick on their resume that says, I did a change intervention, and I did assessment, and I met with clients, and I did communication, and I followed up with survey results. And so try to find educational opportunities where you actually get to work with the client or work with an expert who you can shadow. There's tons of us working out here that would love to have help. But we don't always create those opportunities, and businesses don't often think of that. Like, they don't think, well, I want a senior change person, but I'm also going to staff a junior one so that we can get a little more bang for our buck. So I think some of us are working on making that a more commonplace thing. But in the meantime, I think anyone who's trying to get education in change management, there's lots of it out there. Try to push for getting one and investing in one where you actually get a client experience. That would be my number one kind of advice, I would say.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Keely.
Super long.
Well, I would have others chime in, but I kind of want to watch our time a little bit. I'm really trying to give the opportunity that you're going to continue to hear from these panelists in the next half hour, but I want to finish up our planned questions so that we can then go into a more collaborative conversation with all of our participants. So let's see who is not spoken. We'll start with Erin. What are your primary conclusions about the state of the OCM market as we head into 2023?
Okay, this is fun. So it's hard to talk about 2023 without first kind of taking a look back at the past. And I'm going to start with March of 2021. Something happened in March of 2021 where just a rocket ship of OCM demand took off. And I hate to use the word unprecedented, but there really was, beginning at the end of that first quarter of 2021, an unprecedented, okay, that's why I shouldn't use the word, it has too many syllables, an unprecedented demand for OCM talent. And, you know, we've been doing this for a long time. I have a large network of folks that are in the OCM space and leadership positions at, different places in industry leaders across the United States, or, heads of consulting firms across the United States. And none of us had ever seen anything like it. It was kind of fun, particularly from a financial perspective, but it was also it was incredible. And that was across all sectors for both contract and employee placement. And then the summer of last year came, and that's where we felt a shift, particularly in the employee placement arena. Employers had been hiring like gangbusters for the year before, and they suddenly said, "Oh, we're sitting here at the end of the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter. Lots of question marks ahead. I still don't have a crystal ball from a being able to plan cyclically like I used to." And so they took a pause. And so we started to see a few, they weren't necessarily official, but employee freezes. And then, of course, some of these tech layoffs started to happen last year. And we continue to see that. I'll make a comment about that in a moment, which was, I was listening to some economists today, and they made an interesting comment about that I'll share in a moment. But then anecdotally, as we talk to, our consultants across the United States, the employee placement market still is quite lively. However, and this is the anecdotal part, it seems to be more junior roles that have, lower rates, lower salaries. And so, that's what we're seeing. 2023 is a big, question mark as we sit here in January. And I would sort of say proceed with caution. But the demand for OCM resources, remains very, very steady. The best way to describe 2023 is it's starting to feel pre-COVID. And there's a bit of relief there in the sense of, and these question marks, I'm going to throw out some of the question marks. Are we going to start to see, kind of what we used to call traditional business cycles? And again, I'm looking at this from a consulting and staffing perspective, where projects start to slow down in Q4, people are sort of organizing in Q1, and there's, very steady demand, Q2, Q3 before that, cycle repeats. We haven't seen that, in 4 years. So, let's see what happens. Other question marks, so much uncertainty in the economy, big headwinds there. Obviously, the war in Ukraine and, everything that has all the impacts that has across the globe. Are we headed into a recession? And then, of course, we start to see these very specific tech sector layoffs. The interesting thing I heard about the tech sector today is that there was this economist discussion that they were looking at these specific, like Microsoft today or yesterday announced 10,000, which is, significant. But Microsoft has great balance sheets, great, is making, hand over the, money, whatever, making a lot of money. Sorry, whatever I was trying to say there didn't work out. And so there's some speculation that a lot of the tech markets are using this time of uncertainty basically to reinvest where they see the money and where they don't see the money. Did we overhype, the metaverse? Did we overhype the, reality goggles? That sort of thing. And we're, reinvesting our people, where we need them and kind of cutting off where we don't think we're going to be successful. But there's also like really positive things. The, unemployment rate, remains very low, and so the job market overall is strong. So I guess in summary, we definitely anticipate a continued strong demand for contract OCM resources in 2023, and then that employee placement market may be normal and therefore strong, but just not as strong as that crazy demand that we saw over the previous year.
Thank you, Erin. John, you want to chime in next? And if you may, if you're able, what are you seeing in our market right here? Is there anything that you might say related to particular industries here? And you don't have to, by the way.
Yeah.
If you can cry wolf there.
What I was thinking about with this is that I attended a local HR executive forum event where they talked about, what are on the minds of CHROs, and they did the survey, and of the top things that they were focused on for 2023 was like number 1 or number 2 is change leadership. And so knowing that that's on the minds of CHROs, for those of us that have maybe in the past been working on a project and they're like, oh, we just need a comms plan. You're like, oh, I don't know, we need so much more. Like, it's a beautiful thing to hear that CHROs want to focus on change leadership. I also think something that Dr. K was kind of hitting on with the stretch assignment thing is that this whole concept that everybody's talking about now of this quiet hiring, where those opportunities are available inside organizations where they want to put somebody on the stretch assignment. They want to develop those skills. Those will be great things to look for those of you that may not be, a management consultant or a 1099 consultant on different projects, where you can build some of those skills. And I think the need for those are just going to grow and grow as more people become aware of them. And as more people see things like ChatGPT and chatbots and things like that are really kind of pushing us into this AI space like we haven't been, in the past, but maybe we heard about in the past. So I think there's a lot of opportunity.
And you guys can all tell as an audience, I'm going to let the other two speak as well, because I think this is such an interesting question to be asking everybody. So we're probably going to go a little bit over in our planned questions, but we will get to your opportunity to engage too. So I think, Keely, why don't we have you go next, and then we'll end with Sunil on this question of what's up in 2023.
Yeah, I think Erin covered it well, and so did John. My only add is that at any given day, any given time, there's hundreds of change management jobs open on LinkedIn, and it's been that way for like the last 5 years at least. So in the recession of 2008 or 9 or whenever that happened, like there was still even a handful of change jobs then too. So I think there's an abundance of work. This work is totally needed. And yeah, we may see some shrinkage in certain pockets, but I think there's no better job to have in the coming world of work than dealing with ambiguity and transformations, and who knows what else is going to happen. We can help you figure it out, you know? Yeah, we can help you navigate it. Bring it on.
I love it. Bring it on. All right, Sunil, wrap this one up for us. What are you thinking about 2023? Are you going to move from California to the Twin Cities?
Indeed, I'm there half the time anyway. It feels like winters and summers. So, so for me, the one thing that I wanted to shamelessly plug, because John did bring up a concept of the survey. We have an insight survey from Propeller getting ready to drop, and I'll make sure I tag you as well on it, and I share this with others. But the 2023 insights, a couple of them I'm going to pull from there because I think they are interesting. I complete agreement with what all of the other panelists shared thus far. And I think the two things I'd like to share in addition is that there's been a lot of change happening over the last couple of years. But even if the rate of change slows down, I think there is need for more skilled managers, change managers, to kind of manage the change that's already there. People, the overwhelm factor of being saturated by change, something that's been happening pretty consistently to us, I think has gained a lot of focus front and center. So I think thinking about one of the trends for the future is thinking about the skill of not only managing the change at hand, but having that bigger strategic lens, the change strategy aspects that folks brought up, to ensure that employees, individual contributors, managers, leaders, whoever are going through the change, have a sense of what's happened, what's happening now, and what's coming, and managing appropriately to that. So that's a trend that I think will continue to fortify in 2023. Another one is that, with all of us going back to work in various fashions, I think Erin summarized it well. It's the number one skill that's in demand. There's a lot of demand to understand how to best do this without unfavorable attrition, and without putting, just challenging the collaboration and the teaming aspects that really keep organizations and businesses alive. So it's not just the how many days a week, who comes into the office. The policy side of it certainly requires a lot of thought and change partnership. But the other demand is in what is right for the business, and how are we really bringing our workforces and the planning aspect to reflect what the organization needs. And as you can imagine, that's kind of lots of change talent in there, because it's organizational effectiveness, there's some design aspects, there's certainly communications and training, and also working together, teaming, collaboration, those kinds of aspects. So I think that's another trend that's going to continue on in 2023, as they kind of figure out, how is the future going to be a hybrid workforce forever? Are we going back to pre-pandemic timeframes? Are some industries going to go remote? I think as those questions get answered, this space is going to get richer. So those are the two trends that I thought I'd add on to the richness that's been shared already.
Wow. Thank you guys so much for doing what you have in the past roughly 30 minutes or more to answer the planned questions. You've generated some questions that I already see in the chat. I can ask a couple of those. Why don't I'll start that way, I guess, which is, and Keely's already chimed in on one of them, but Nate asks, and hi, Nate, haven't seen you in a while, by the way, hi, we appreciate that the OCM demand is high, but what are we seeing for pricing or rate related pressures? And Keely has noted a couple times today, she put together some material for us, y'all. I do not have an easy way at this moment to share it the way I want to real time, but know that you will get a post-summit communication in the coming days. And we have turned on some functionality at our website to be able to share resources to our members. So members will be able to come and get the content that we share in our change summits, and also be able to see the recordings, so that whether you are here or aren't here, you'll still be able to take in the sharing that we have each month in our summits. All right, so sorry.
if we have a lot
Haley's
of,
already, yeah, go ahead.
if there's a
Julie.
lot of appetite to talk salaries and that, I'm happy to, I can share my screen at towards the end and talk more through that. I'm guessing there's other questions out there too, so.
Yep, so we've got the salary question and you know, how is that being affected? And then Josh also asked then, what's the most compelling OCM selling point to managers or buyers with more traditional mindsets? Ooh, Josh, do you wanna, is that obvious to our panelists, or you wanna explain yourself a little bit more?
Well, in my role, we're oftentimes trying to sell to people who are, you know, have not bought in or have not seen the value in OCM related to the role. Just honestly, from my perspective, it's just the way that they were brought up in their career. So curious to know what your perspective is on that.
Love that question. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Aaron. I can
I'm
jump
so
in.
sorry. That was directed to you, Sunil. I missed it. Sorry, because I was over here like chewing on it. I'm so sorry.
No, go for it. No, go for it. That's fine.
No, I love that question. I don't think I'm sharing anything new, but it's just, sorry, with all this excitement popped into my head. I think we make a big mistake of talking about organizational change management, selling organizational change management, and that's the wrong conversation to have. And I think like a couple of ways, just real quick off the top of my head to reframe that are, you know, everybody is going to manage risk. And so change management is just about managing people risk. And so that's one way to take all of the organizational change management about it. They're going to, you know, manage, you know, operational risk. They're going to manage financial risk. So manage your people risk. And the second thing is, especially we're talking about a change initiative, it has an ROI attached to it. So look at how they're defining the success of that ROI, and you're going to find adoption in there somewhere. So talk about, again, stop talking about organizational change management, start talking about the work that you do and how that's going to drive the ROI of whatever they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and if I can piggyback on that, Aaron, completely agree. Some years ago, as we were trying, you know, we were getting into the tech industry and change management in the tech industry, which is an interesting space. I think we really went to the basis of the ROI, but also and also the basis of what is the business outcome? Why is this change important, right? And basically going upstream to say, is this a change for change's sake, or are we really invested in driving a business outcome? And then mapping all of the change needs and the change strategy and plans that can be measured by that business outcome. So after the change management work has come and gone, creating the frameworks and the measurements such that the business can continue to say, yeah, that was actually a good change. People are not using workarounds. They've adopted, they've landed with whatever we want the future state to be. And it's actually guiding where we thought the business outcome would be as a result of that. I think tying back to that has made it really valuable to say, it's not about the cost of the change management team per se, but really thinking about how can we help you ensure that the business reason for which you initiated this change is actually successful in measurable terms at the end.
If I can add into, I've also seen a lot of success specifically with consulting firms, where not jumping in and trying to sell like, we're going to do this huge transformation for you, you know, maybe coming in and saying, I'm going to do a 2-week analysis and show you what I see, and then show you the value that I think we can bring. And then we can decide after we do that analysis, like what's next and what do you want to do? And then everything that they talked about with, you know, the ROI and being able to measure and show the value and show the impact to the bottom line, I think goes a long way.
That's great, you guys. You know what? If you guys don't mind, the chat is the chat. And if you do, as a panelist or otherwise, want to help answer those questions, please do. But is there anybody that wants to just kind of come on live and ask their question or grapple or say something in reaction to what we've said or what we've been talking about tonight? Everybody went quiet. All right, that's all right. Anything else from the panelists that you want to Oh, I see Mike. Mike, you came on. You look like you're going to talk. Go for it.
Wow, that's very observant. I put this in the chat, but I'll echo what I put in the chat, that this conversation speaks to, I guess, my bias or core belief that change is more than telling and training. And so it's also more than us coming in and doing something for you. I guess, in my opinion, it's us helping you meet business goals and building your ability to do this moving forward. And so it's neat to hear us talking about that. And I guess that's a question I did have for the panelists is there a trend? Somebody mentioned change leadership a couple of minutes ago. It's been my personal experience that a lot of change work I've been involved in is what I would call tactical or telling and training. Is there an appetite or a trend out there for this more holistic approach that we're talking about right now?
I can take that first. In every engagement that I've done in the last 7 years, even if I'm just contracted to do training and comms, I almost always add a work stream for leadership engagement, because I really think no matter what kind of change you're trying to lift off, you need to understand who your leaders are and how good of change leaders they are. And being a change leader, there's, a couple of fundamental skills that you have to have if you're leading a change or advocating for a change that's going to happen to your department, right? And they're pretty simple things, but not every leader knows them. And so I just try to make the assumption that you're going to need to know that stuff. And I'm not going to assume everyone knows it already. And you just kind of figure out a way to integrate that into work. And I have never had a client ever not say, I'm so glad you did that. That was so valuable to us. Or I feel so much more confident that I can lead my team through a change now because I know what I'm supposed to do as their leader. So everyone appreciates it. I think it's hard talking about traditional mindsets. It's hard to know if you're the executive or the buyer or the sponsor of the implementation or the project. It's really hard to go, oh yeah, well, we're going to need communications, we're going to need training, we're going to need workflow, we're going to need hardware, and we're really going to need our own employees to get a lot smarter about how to change. Like, it's just not part of the intuitive package of what that entails, but you need it, people need it, it resonates. And yes, Mike, absolutely. Be the person that helps everyone else look better and do better.
Completely agree. I think we talk about what's in it for me as one of the core things that we use in the change process. And we've found that when leaders themselves have a lack of alignment on why they're doing the change and what's in it for them, that just spells more trouble, because the communication gets splintered, the real takeaways and what each of the individuals within the organizations are expected to do just gets more diluted. It's I want to kind of piggyback on what Keely said, and in complete agreement.
All right, well, I'm having a hard time myself following the chats. I'm not seeing anything new in the last 5 minutes, but what do people want to ask about as we continue this conversation today?
There was a VMS question. Did anybody see that? How do you deal with the client that's a VMS or vendor management?
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. I did see that earlier. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was dreaded VMS. No, and I'd ask my other panelists to chime in too. But I think the first thing when it comes to VMS is that not every VMS is the same. And so there's companies that have a VMS program where if I just try to set up coffee with somebody in that organization, I could get my hand slapped. Like, nope, can't do that. Where there's others that they're way more open to it. And so I think lead with relationships is what I would say when it comes to companies that have a strong VMS. If you know somebody, maybe a second connection in LinkedIn, that might be well connected with that organization, kind of feel it out, like how rigid is the program there? Is there anyone that you could connect with to learn more and things like that? But it also can be quite a process. It can take months to go through that whole process to become an approved vendor and things. And so, when you're working on a project or pitching a project, know that it has happened where, oh, we can't work with you because we have to go through that process and it's going to take months and months and months. And so we're going to go with this other vendor now. I've seen that happen a lot.
I've seen it in the chat, there is quite an appetite to speak to salaries, so I don't want to gloss over that. So Keely, I know you put together the slides. I just wasn't quite ready to share my screen with them. Do you want to go ahead and talk that for maybe 3 or 4 minutes tops? We'll get to
Yeah, let's handle that. Well, let's pretend to handle it.
Oh, you know what? We may have to give you permission. Oh, good.
Did it
Perfect.
work?
Yep, it's working. Oh,
Sweet, okay. So I just put this together. This is about 2 years old, the salary data you're seeing here, but what you're looking at is like, these are the top kind of common job titles for folks in change management: specialist, PM, change manager, consultant, change manager, manager, and then director. And these salary ranges are, they start here. This is like a base entry level change person. This is like kind of your most senior role in change. And these base salaries came from LinkedIn, like I said, from 2020. I think they've grown a little bit since then, but certainly they weren't affected by the pandemic much. And they're right on target from the couple years before too. So I did salary data in 2018 as well. So just to give you kind of an idea, as you progress through a change management career, these are very average salaries and annuals that you could make across the country. Now, of course, they vary in the spots that you're in and the industries that you're in. Certainly, if you're in the Bay or New York or Los Angeles, or probably Houston, Aaron, these salaries would be a lot higher. But just to give you kind of a general idea, pretty lucrative career, once you kind of find your way in. And just for whatever it's worth, if you have like a specific job you're looking at on LinkedIn and you know someone who's a premium member, they can oftentimes see salary ranges for jobs like those too. So
this is great. Do you have any similar knowledge about like consulting change rates?
Yeah,
what those have done?
I think, well, Aaron can probably speak to this better than me. I'm an independent, so I try to stick like 5% under what I think the national bill rate is. But that covers all kinds of things because I own my own business, which is really different from like when you work at Propeller or any other consulting firm. But I don't know, Sunil, Aaron, are these on target for what you're seeing?
I think the rate discussion we were talking about independent consulting is a tough one just because there are so many variables. I think the first and foremost, which would be disappointing because I have this conversation a lot, is that in independent consulting, they're recruiting for the role. And if you're going after that role and it's this big and your skills and experience and passions are this big, sorry, they're recruiting for this role. And so independent contracting rates are very, very role based and really don't care what else you might be able to bring to the table. They're looking for you to fill this. And that's sort of the hard conversation. And then beyond that, there's so many variables, industry being one of them. Retail is cutthroat with rates. Oil and gas, push them, see how far, you can get. We brought up the vendor management system. Vendor management systems automatically, sometimes dramatically, take something off your rate. The closer as an independent consultant that you can get to the direct client, the higher your rate's going to be. If you go through me as a staffing firm, obviously we have a target margin. And so if you're not, if you're able to develop your own relationships, hang your shingle, cultivate those relationships, get direct to a client, the closer you get to that direct client with your contracting, the higher rates you'll get. The other thing is the type of work, and it kind of ties into that role. Where my space, which I proudly call commodity IT, the rate pressure on that, when I started out doing this in, I guess, contracting in the early 10s, I could bill myself for probably twice as much as I can bill myself now, just because within the IT space, that's considered a commodity skill set. And so rates there have actually come down. And then I'll juxtapose that with just strategic work. Organizational design, the closer you can get to strategic work versus tactical work, that's going to drive a higher rate. But sometimes, those are harder to get because oftentimes you have, the McKinseys and those sort of organizations, they're looking to consulting firms to do that work rather than independents. But when you start looking at, some of those mid-market companies, that's where you have a lot of opportunity to get closer to the client, closer to the C-suite, and closer to that strategic work as a smaller player if we're talking about independent consultants. So lots of variables there.
Sunil, do you have anything to add? I mean, I would still say, Aaron, do you think these are ballpark target for these job titles though? Or do you think these are off by a significant amount?
Their ballpark.
Yeah, yeah.
I think if I'm going back to some of the firms where I was the HR leader for, management consulting firms, who were bringing in change consultants, we were paying a lot higher than some of these salaries. For like a mid-level change consultant could expect like 140 annual salary. The really seasoned like pros, even higher than that in the Twin Cities market. So
That's helpful.
And the only other kind of comment I have is I think the more you kind of head into niche skill sets and transformation work,
Yes.
which is more than a single person here or there, I think that because of the economies of scale and it's kind of turnkey for clients, they're like, hey, there's 6 work streams and this is a big change over the course of multiple years or multiple months. I think there's a little bit more tolerance for rate. Especially as a kind of a boutique firm that has a lot of depth and experience in change management. If we're able to present ourselves as having talent, that's a good alternative to the big firms, which obviously run at pretty high rates. So I think that's the other angle to look at: the rate of change and who is it actually impacting and who's the sponsor.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. I mean, these are just literally all the jobs that are called change management consultant collated on LinkedIn in that year. This is like the average of what they were paying. So of course there's tons and tons of variables there. And yeah, John, to your point, the employer is going to pay a little bit more on top for hiring those external consultants, whether they're independent or from a firm. But anyway, this just to kind of land someplace, this is like a definite, like somewhere in the ballpark, lots of variables, and I would say opportunity to make much more than what you see here on the screen.
Thank you, Keely.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm
All
going to
the
steal the
things I
ball.
wish we had these panels when we were, starting out, because there's just so many things I wish I'd known before I stepped into this job.
Totally agree with you. And it's been interesting. I can just say as a participant tonight, listening to you all and experiencing for myself 2 different major markets, it really has been interesting to navigate from oil and gas in the Houston area and what I got used to as an independent consultant, bill rate wise, and how I had to pivot a little bit when I came this way. And some of that may have been establishing myself here or whatever, but definitely from a rate perspective, it's been lower. I've personally found it lower here than what I had before, but I also know that oil and gas has taken an interesting hit in these last couple of years too. We're not driving cars quite as much. And so anyway, all right, we still have time for at least, some more back and forth, but I did want to share my screen and really encourage our attendees today to rate your experience. It's just a really quick couple of questions that we typically ask to really help us continue to improve our programming and make sure that your member experience is great. All right, so I haven't.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please go for it, Tom. That's what I was going to do next.
Yeah, so I'd be interested in the panelist perspective on in the consulting space, selling OCM by the hour versus selling it by, as a fixed rate for a project.
I'll just give my perspective on that. At a very high level, that would be how I distinguish consulting versus staffing. And we are a staffing firm. Consulting firms have a deliverable. I'm going to deliver you a optimized supply chain organization. And so there's going to be some sort of, fixed fee or possible even financial pullback if I don't deliver that to you. Whereby on a staffing side, we're just bringing you talent. We actually don't have deliverables. And so that's hourly. And so I'll just leave it there of sort of my very classic, because sometimes I have to explain to people because they know me from a consulting background that we're a staffing firm, not a consulting firm. And that's kind of a key way that I differentiate those 2 things that somewhat align with your question.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we take into effect while thinking about time and materials versus fixed fee is the rate of unknowns in the scope of work we're taking on. in those initial conversations with clients and stakeholders, we get the feeling that there is a body of work that's defined. Of course, every work is going to come with some ambiguity, but if we feel that there is a level of, yes, we can navigate this and actually commit to deliverables and deliver them at high quality, I think we would go down the route of a fixed fee based on our past experience and how we've done that. If it's hugely, like if the scope is not known or lots of conversations have to happen before we can even lock it down, I think John suggested the approach. We'd go for something shorter that for a few weeks so that we can assess, we can run some assessment, have some conversations, and commit to a time and materials so that we can say, hey, we want to spend X amount of hours with you for this fee, and then we'll be able to actually propose what the work should look like in a subsequent milestone-based fashion. And so I think that the level of unknown guides that for us.
Nice.
I love that answer. And I'll just add again, that independent contractor perspective, your level of unknown is extremely high. And so the independent contract in terms of what you can control as well. And so in that independent contracting market, without knowing anything else, I would sort of, my guidance would be, no, stick to time and materials.
Tom, thank you for that. What unfortunately has to be our last question. And thank you so much for how each of you chimed in for things. Y'all, this has been an amazing night. These last 3 years in Minnesota Change Management Network have been great. We've kept a very wonderful momentum of membership, but I'm overwhelmed by how many of you all came out tonight because it has been very hard to put programming together virtually and have a large audience. And I feel like we had one of our largest audiences we've had in a couple years now. And I thank you guys for your time. Aaron, John, Keely, Sunil, thank you for your thought leadership tonight. And I look forward to getting you all a post-summit communication so that you guys can see these resources and refer back to them. So everybody have a great night. We're hopefully going to see all of you all face to face if you choose to, if you're in the Twin Cities area on February 16th, I think the date is. We're going to be at the Marriott West, which is in the St. Louis Park area, and we'll have the lovely Shannon Rose Farrell Jackson talking about culture building in the world of IT and how change management is in that. Aaron, maybe we'll see you there just out of curiosity to it. Shannon is a gem. So again, thanks everybody for a great night and a great session. We'll see you soon.